Hey everyone, welcome back to How to Train Your Gavin. Today I'm doing another episode of In Conversation With, and I am joined by the incredible author of Orion Lost and the brand new and upcoming Adam-2, and that author is Alastair Chisholm. Thank you so much for joining my channel today, Alastair.
Thanks very much for having me.
Oh, anytime. Also, can I raise a glass to you for the upcoming release of Adam-2, which is going to be so exciting for everyone to read. I also want to say that I have read it and I loved it. It was fantastic. I've got a backlog of reviews I need to catch up on, so I need to get to it. But it was fantastic, and I would urge everybody to pick it up when it comes out. I got a notification today to say my signed book plate edition of it came in Waterstones. So if anybody wants to try and see if there's any early copies out there, Waterstones is the way to go. But I do also have pre-order links down in the description box if you want to check it out. So yeah, we will be spoiler free, of course, won't we, Alistair? We're not going to spoil anything, are we?
Absolutely.
Cheers. Cheers. And yeah, so hopefully everyone will be able to pick it up. And also Orion Lost, because that is another fantastic sci-fi middle grade that I have been recommending on my channel since the dawn of time. So everyone, if anybody has any questions, do let us know in the comments. But Alistair, I have a tricky little round for you to sort of play. And that is my little cheeky icebreaker round. Are you ready for it?
I guess so.
Awesome. I also want to say as well, CC's pre-order actually already came today too. So that is incredible.
Oh, that's really cool. Oh, fantastic. It's wonderful to think it's actually starting to get out there. That's awesome.
Yeah. I also want to say Emma read I think on NetGalley Adam-2 and loved it.
Oh, so. Thanks, Ross.
And Jade, my bestie Jade, the best sci-fi middle grade.
Hi, Jade.
Yeah, Jade's infamous now. Alistair knows all about Jade. Yeah, keep the comments coming, keep the questions coming, and I will start with my questions. So, Alistair, my very first random icebreaker question is, name something that is on your bucket list.
Skydiving.
Ooh, are you not scared of that?
Totally, absolutely. Yes.
So that's why you want to do it?
Yeah. But I'll save it until I'm facing imminent death, so then I'll be fine.
Oh god, yeah. I mean, it'll get the heart racing, it'll get the blood pumping.
Yeah,
it's what you need. Also, sorry, Emma, it was an actual print arc. Nosy Crow are on it. They are on it, and Jade spotted it in Waterstones today.
Oh, wow.
Have a copy. I know, right? People are just too excited for it. They've already got their copies of it.
Yeah,
amazing. What is the best sci-fi book you've ever read, or the best sci-fi movie you've ever watched, or the best sci-fi TV show you've ever watched?
Wow. Okay.
A lot in one.
Yeah. I think one of the best sci-fi books I've ever read was actually a comic. It was The Ballad of Halo Jones, and it was in 2000 AD, a long time ago. It's about a girl who is growing up in a sci-fi environment, and she's in a really sort of restrained world, and she just wants to get out. And she gets out and she lives an extraordinary life. And it's absolutely amazing if you get a chance. It's by Alan Moore and Ian Gibson. It's really, really good. And the best sci-fi film I've ever watched is Guardians of the Galaxy. And my family have watched it about 17 times because it is the greatest movie ever made. Yes, it is. It is.
Fair. What did you think of Volume 2?
I liked it too. I don't think it could ever be quite as good, but I've watched it again a few times since then, and I can see more of what they were doing, and actually I really like it, and I'm really excited about the third one as well. So yeah, total fan.
Me too. I mean, yeah, I love the Guardians of the Galaxy movie. I thought that was, I mean, when it first got announced, I was like, I'm not too sure, because I'm all about the whole like superheroes like Spider-Man and all of that. But then it came out and I was like, wow, this was actually so fun, so entertaining.
Yeah,
I want more of this.
Absolutely.
Oh, Claire also loves Guardians of the Galaxy.
Claire has excellent taste.
Claire does have excellent taste. Just bought Adam-2 today and put on my August TBR straight away. Incredible.
Great.
Incredible stuff. If you could visit anywhere in the solar system, where would you go?
Oh, wow. Well, the sun's pretty cool. I think I think actually the moon, because if I was on the moon, then I'd be able to look and I'd be able to see the Earth rise, the curve of the Earth and the whole thing of that, and that would be, I think, pretty amazing. So it's quite kind of low in ambition just to get to the moon, but I think that would be a wonderful thing to see.
I mean, like for a lot of us, we're never ever going to see the moon, so I feel like it's a great goal to have.
Yeah.
But
who knows? It's maybe achievable.
Yeah, it is. It is achievable. You just have to become a billionaire. Like the guy who went to the moon recently, I can't remember his name.
Yeah, Jeff Bezos. Up into the edge of space. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Easy peasy.
Easily done with if you have £1 billion. So
yeah.
Do you have any embarrassing author moments that you can share?
Well, one I was chatting to you about was when I was first going out to schools. It was one of the first times I'd ever been, and it was with my my first picture book. And I went into the class, and the teacher was really nice. I was a little bit nervous, and she was really sort of smiling. And she said to the class, she said, "Oh, look, we've all been doing picture books this morning, and it's really lovely. And today we've now got a very special visitor. Does anybody know who it is?" And the little girl beside her looked at the teacher, and then she looked at me and she said, "Is it Julia Donaldson?" And I said yes, because I thought, why not? So that was a great start.
Yeah, Julia Donaldson does dominate the picture book world. So I guess
for good reason.
It's Julia Donaldson's world, and we're all living in it. That's essentially what it is.
Yeah.
What were you like as a child?
I was quite nerdy and quite booky, and I probably quite bumptious. I like telling stories and telling very long, silly jokes. But I was always the person who was curled up with a book or hidden under a table at some social event reading my book. So that was me.
Did you ever used to do loads of puzzles when you were a kid? Because you also write puzzle books and Sudoku things as well, don't you?
I do, yeah. I used to love the logic puzzles and crosswords and things like that. I really was, the full-on nerdy geek. I really sort of embraced that lifestyle, and then it's been my whole life since.
Well, I mean, you made some book from it, so
yeah. I regret nothing. It was great.
Exactly. I love this, Jade. My embarrassing moment was when I was raving and fangirling about how much I loved Orion Lost in a middle grade monthly live show, and then the author showed up. Yeah. That was a fantastic moment. Like, we were just all like, we're such fangirls of Alastair Chisholm and Orion Lost, and then boop, Alastair Chisholm appears out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It's incredible. It was incredible.
It was lovely. I was slightly mortified. I thought, what am I going to come over as somebody who just comes along for the praise? But it was really nice.
Yeah. No, you are welcome anytime. You are welcome anytime. We loved having you there, honestly. A lot of people also love Guardians of the Galaxy too. Sharon, great. That was funny. It was last May, I think it was. I think it was May 2020 when it was our middle grade monthly pick. And I don't think we've ever read something as universally loved in the book club since. So,
oh wow, that's really nice.
That is an accolade we can put on the cover of your next book.
Yeah, if Nosy Crow had known, I think they probably would have done
that. We'll let them know now. That's not too late to change it. In a future reprinting of Orion Lost, we can have middle grade monthly on the front.
Absolutely.
Have you read anything recently that you would recommend?
I'm reading an awful lot of really great stuff at the moment. Because I'm reading a lot of middle grade fiction, almost everything that I pick up, I think actually this is really good for some reason or another. So Elle McNichols' A Kind of Spark is a fantastic book, I think. Does a really, really great job of putting you in the point of view of somebody neurodivergent, but also I think being quite sympathetic to the people around her. So it's not harsh as such, it's quite sort of understanding of everybody. I absolutely loved it. And I recently read When Life Gives You Mangoes. sorry, I've forgotten the author, but that's a lovely book, and I really recommend that. It's got a really, really brilliant sort of atmosphere, and there's a bit of a mystery in it, which is really great. And Neil Gaiman's Norse myths, his book of Norse myths, is very, very good. It's really funny. He's got a really perfect tone, and all his stories about Loki and Thor are hilarious. They're really, really good. So yeah, lots of stuff.
Yeah, you've read quite a bit. And I was going to say, I haven't read Norse mythology, but I have read When Life Gives You Mangoes. It's by Corinne Getton. And that is just such a good book. Oh my gosh. Like, when we get to the kind of last part of that book, and you're just like, what?
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, so well done.
So well done. I mean, most middle grades are these days. Like, seriously, the whole middle grade field, I feel, has just, it's like some kind of renaissance. And it's just pretty much all of the middle grade books I read have just knocked it out the park. And yeah, you're part of that now. I hope you don't mind.
It's very cool.
But this is the last random question before we start talking about you. Can you tell me a moment from this past year that has really made you happy?
Wow. About a few months ago, my family actually got to meet up. My mum lives up in Perth. My sister lives up in Perth with her husband and kids. And there was the window that opened up in lockdown where we could actually start to meet up. And every year there is a trip that we all take to a loch in Flotterstone, which is to the west of Edinburgh. And we go there and we see my dad, because when my dad died, we put his ashes in a sort of nice place, and we planted a tree, which is him. And so every year we go and see it. And of course, last year we weren't able to because of lockdown. So earlier this year, we actually all got to meet up, and we did what we usually did, which is have a big picnic, and then we take the walk and we go and see him. We sit by the river and we just sort of chat for a bit, and then we all came back and had a hug, and it was the most fantastic thing just to sort of connect again with my family and see everybody for real. So I think that was probably one of the happiest moments of the last year. So.
Yeah, that was all, like, that's wonderful. Like, especially when such a long time passes and you don't realize just how much you miss your family and like miss the people you don't get to see as occasionally as usual. That must be like so nice, and just to get back together and stuff. So yeah, I mean, I asked that question because I like to keep things positive and upbeat, and to just kind of appreciate what we have.
Well, I think it's really good, isn't it? Because so many people, it's so easy to think of the last year in sort of negative terms, but actually, that was a wonderful moment. So that should be the thing I remember from it. Yeah.
Claire is Scottish too. Norse mythology was a great read, Gavin. I will read it at some point, I promise. Alastair, you've convinced me, especially the stuff about Thor and Loki. I'm there.
It's very, very good.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty gritty. Let's get into what we came for, and that's to talk about Alastair Chisholm and his books. So, Alastair, what was life like before you became an author? What did you do before the world, kind of took you under its wing, realized that you are this, big name person? So, what was life like before?
Well, I'm a computer programmer by day. So my life is quite geeky. I went in and I was working with computers all day. I always liked telling stories, so I was sort of writing a few stories in the background. I'm married. I've got two small children. Well, actually, they're not small anymore. They're now almost fully grown teenagers. But most of my life was either working or sort of trying to keep track of them and work out where they'd gone. And it was all that kind of thing. And then the stories then had sort of drifted along in the background for quite a long way. And it was the stories, it was the geekiness that sort of led me into logic puzzles and making logic puzzles. And that was how everything else then kicked off from there.
And you write picture books as well, don't you? Like, is that like so different to what you do with like Orion Lost and Adam-2?
It's very different. The picture books actually came first. The first book I had, The Prince and the Witch and the Thief and the Bears, is a sort of silly fairy tale about telling stories. And it actually came out of talking to my children and telling my children bedtime stories. And you think, I can make up a bedtime story, sure. And then you try. And then they ask you questions, and they say, and you say, a long time ago there was a prince. And they said, oh, I don't want the prince. I wanted to be a princess. And you think, oh, okay, right. And then, or you come up with a bad guy, and they go, no, I like the bad guy. I don't like the hero. He's rubbish. And you think, oh, okay. So it sort of came out of that. They are very different. Partly because you're working with an illustrator, or initially you do the text, and then usually the illustrator then comes along and interprets that. So when you're working out each page, you're trying to balance what you're going to do with the words versus what the picture is going to say, and the way that they work together. And there's a lot more about what it's going to feel like when you're reading it out loud. How long is it going to be? How to sort of get the right message across. It's quite lovely actually switching between the two things. It's really nice.
Have you been doing that? Like, have you been balancing them both at the same time? Like, what does like a writing day look like for you? Do you have to focus on one before you focus on the other, or do you do like everything at once, like all of it?
At the moment, it's a little bit of everything. Partly because I'm sort of in an editing stage at the moment with quite a few books. So it's sort of edits are coming back for the picture books and for sci-fi novels and for other things. So that's quite bitty. I have, although I work almost full time now, but I have one day a week when I can dedicate to writing. And so I tend to try and get up quite early and sort of rattle through things. It tends to be where I am in the book. Once I've actually got the plot in my head, I do try and sort of batter through this as fast as I can. But it's amazing how many little things sort of fill up the day these days.
I can imagine. You must have to keep sort of a task list or something to have it all organized. Otherwise, you'd be like, what?
Yeah. Yes, especially at the moment, of course, with the launch. Yes. So that's all. But that's all. It's really exciting, and even when I'm not actively writing, it's really fun to be sort of involved in it and be talking to other people and talking to kids and doing sort of school visits or virtual school visits and talking to them as well and doing events with them. It's really, really fun.
Yeah, it sounds like such a dream job. In fact, actually, Tracy has a really fantastic question. Oops, I clicked on the wrong one, sorry. What do your kids think of you being an author? I mean, they must think you're a cool dad, right?
Yeah, you'd think, wouldn't you? No, I guess it's been going on for so long. They don't really think about it too much. It's just that kind of thing. Every so often, like recently, my daughter got in touch with me. She sent me a message to say, your book's in Waterstones, and she was astonished. And that was up in St Andrews, and it was when the children's the Waterstones Children's Book Prize was on. So she said, it's in the window of Waterstones, and I was like, it's in the window of all the Waterstones, and she's 18, and for a moment, I thought maybe she was briefly proud of her dad, and that was quite fun. And then after that, she found something to complain about. But no, they're really, really good. And Orion Lost, actually, my eldest daughter, she was the first person who ever read Orion Lost, and she was the reason why I knew it was going to work, because she got into it, and then by the end she was sort of running through to tell me what had happened in the book, and then running back to read a bit more, and I was thinking, I've got something there. So they're really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely positive she is proud of her dad. I know I would be. Yeah. Do you know about this? I must say is that there's a park near me which currently has a trail based on one of your books. What?
It is so cool. Yes, it's based on it's the Story Barn, and it's based on this book, The Prince and the Witch and the Thief and the Bears, and it's been absolutely fantastic. They have a sort of guided tour that you can do, and you get a map, and you've got to find various bits of the book and put them all together, and it's been absolutely wonderful seeing it. And they've had little class trips and things like that, and they made a really, really cool trailer for it of somebody going and doing it, and it was quite exciting. So that was that's been a very strange thing to imagine that, but it's really fun. Yes, it's the Story Barn in near Liverpool, and and it looks really great. You should totally go to it.
I will. I will. It sounds awesome, actually.
Yeah.
I know Jade has a question that will fit after the question I'm about to ask. Jade, was children's fiction a natural fit for you? Like, would you ever write young adult and adult books, or like, do you feel like children's books in middle grade is your like kind of go-to?
I think it's definitely my favorite. I have written short stories for adults, and I did have a text which was originally a kind of YA that I'm currently in the process of converting into middle grade, because when I look back at the books that I absolutely loved, most of them were what we would now describe as middle grade, I think, and it's such a brilliant stage, I think, for kids, because their reading age is getting up to this stage where they can read quite complex things. Their level of sophistication is incredibly high. It's much higher, I think, than parents or other adults actually think. There's an awful lot that they understand about the world, and these books are giving them paths into it. And when I think about the books that really influenced my life, so many of them are from that sort of age range. So when I sit down and think, what is it that I actually want to write? That is just the thing that seems to me to be just perfect. So so I have there are some more books coming out next year for younger children. So more at the sort of bottom end of middle grade or slightly younger, and they're really great too. And again, it's kind of that thing where kids are more sophisticated than you think, and we can give them really great adventures. But yeah, definitely, this is my area, I think.
I definitely agree with that, especially since, yeah, like I think I can't remember if I mentioned. Oh no, I mentioned this on the live about how middle grade children's books have entered a kind of renaissance, and there's definitely more real life topics that are more kind of widely accepted. Like as you mentioned, Elle McNichol's a kind of Spock. We see neurodivergent main character. In Adam-2, we have non-binary character, and we actually see a lot more representation and stuff, and we can talk more like in depth about that. But I definitely agree. Like children's books, middle grade books, yeah. Kids who are reading these just like they understand that what's going on around them, and we need to give them more credit, which I feel like authors like you are doing. And Emma said, I felt Adam-2 was a YA style written for middle grade, and I love that. I think I put it in my review. In fact, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah. Yeah, when I was growing up, there was a thing called Puff and Plus, which was a category that was basically confident readers 12 plus, and that eventually I think became YA, and then YA has sort of moved further and further up the scale. But it's that sort of just at the upper end of what's currently middle grade is where I really like writing. So.
Yeah, I feel like Adam-2 could bridge that kind of gap between them. Like if there was a reader who wanted to read something like a bit more like teen-esque, then I would say like, oh, you can like read Adam-2. It's almost like Northern Lights by Philip Pullman. Kids can read it, and it's kind of it fits in the young adult market as well. It's kind of like that. I do love this question that Jade asked. I did ask it just before we went live as well. Do you feel like there is a sci-fi gap in the middle grade market? Jade does, and love like you're filling it. Is there a reason you gravitate towards sci-fi for a younger audience?
I do think there's a gap. I think there's actually quite a lot of sci-fi out there, and people who've been doing it for some time, like Christopher Edge, Tom Huddleston, Philip Reeves. These people have already been there doing sort of speculative fiction and science fiction. Kirsty Applebaum's True Friend last year was a really great book about robots. But there's definitely a kind of perception that sci-fi isn't there, and then you get the publishers or the bookshops saying, yeah, sci-fi doesn't sell very well, but it's because they're not putting it in. And then when you actually present it, I think to readers, to the kids, they actually seem to absorb it, and it's really great. I love science fiction because when I was growing up, there was an awful lot of science fiction. So there were authors like Nicholas Fisk and people like that who were doing really, really cool ideas. And I was still able to kind of read some of the old school writers like Asimov and Heinlein and people like that. And there was much more of a feeling like, yeah, science fiction is a great thing to show to kids because it gives them a way of thinking about the future. So when I was writing, science fiction was kind of an obvious thing for me to go for, because I love it anyway, and I'm quite geeky. So writing science fiction kind of fits into my strengths. But I think what I'm hoping is that over the next few years, we're going to see there's actually an awful lot of science fiction potentially out there, and we just want to kind of get that feeling like, yeah, it's there, and you should definitely go and find some, because it's all awesome.
Yeah, I definitely think as well, it just needs to be like marketed more, and I feel like I do discover lots of hidden gems, and I don't want them to be hidden gem. I want them to blow up and be massive. Like Orion Lost, I feel like that was a bit of a hidden gem earlier last year, but then it got shortlisted for the Waterstones Children's Book Prize. It's got so much attention online, and it deserves it. It deserves it all. So like we just need to say, like, we need to push these hidden gems into people's laps and be like, look, sci-fi middle grade, it will sell. It's fantastic. Read it. That's essentially what we're going to do. Easy peasy. Speaking of Orion Lost, because it was your sort of like novel middle grade debut, what was it like trying to get that published? Like, what made you take the leap from, as you said, the picture books came first. What made you take the leap from that to writing Orion Lost?
Yeah, good question, actually. I think I'd been having a lot of fun with the picture books, and I still am, and really, really enjoy them. But I was starting to think, do I have a longer story? And eventually I thought, well, how am I going to go about this? And I tried to think about what the things had been that I really loved about the books that I'd read when I was that age. What the themes were, what things had really bugged me, what things that I really, really liked. And then I sort of started to have these ideas about things that I wanted. And then I just woke up one morning in a sort of half dream, and I had a scene in my head, and the scene was a girl wakes up on a starship. The starship's completely deserted in my dream, and I could hear her walking along the corridors, and it was all sort of echoey metal. And then she looks out of a portal into space, and she hears a voice saying, "It's up to you to save us." And that was when I woke up, and that was it. And I had that scene, and everything else came out of there. And as soon as I had that, with the stuff I'd been thinking about, what kind of book I wanted to write, it just arrived, and it was wonderful. And that was such a great feeling. And at the time, I was starting to write, and people were talking about this idea of just sort of trying to write a little bit every day, because it was quite a daunting idea to go from a picture book to a full-length children's novel. So I just tried to write a little bit every day, and sort of 4 or 5 months later, suddenly I had a novel, and there it was, and everything kind of changed from there.
How many words was Orion Lost?
The final version, I think, was around 65, which is quite long for middle grade. The version I actually sent to Nosy Crow was 85,000 words. And my editor, Tom Bonnick at Nosy Crow, did an absolutely fantastic job steering me into which bits could be pruned, and how to sort of carve it back into shape, and which characters I needed to lose in order to sort of bring the complexity down a bit. And really, it was a fantastic job that he did, and I was really delighted with the output.
Yeah, I mean, I think I speak for everyone though in saying I would love a director's cut of Orion Lost, or like the whole unedited thing. Like, I want the 85,000 words, please. Like,
sure,
the longer the better. I want to say it all. So with Orion Lost, how has the response been since it came out? Like, has it helped you as a writer going into Adam-2, which was your second book? Like, how did it change your approach to writing?
Yeah, it was quite a game changer, I think, mentally, because the picture books were one of the picture books was out at this time, and there were others coming, but this felt like a really sort of meteor thing. And I think there's obviously quite a lot of uncertainty. Am I actually able to make a book this length that's going to make sense? Even so, to have one done that made suddenly everything else feel much more achievable. And when I sat down to write the next one, I was like, yeah, I know how to do this. I sit down at the start and I just keep going until I get to the end, and then I go back and I fix the stuff. So knowing that I could do it was a really big deal. And it took quite a long time to actually get Orion Lost published, or to get a contract for publish. So although I had the text, I didn't actually have a publisher, but just knowing that I could do it once was enough to kind of get me doing it again. So the second one was I would say much easier. I think that's the big thing, is the feeling that yes, you can definitely do it. It is great.
That must have been so comforting to know that, I've managed to do this full-length novel. I've released it into the world. People loved it. It must have been such a motivational thing. Like when you sat down to write Adam-2, like, oh yeah, like all that feedback in your head, like about Orion Lost, and then you're writing Adam-2, and you're just like, it like fuels you almost.
It was really nice. The reception amongst friends and family were really good, but when you start to get reviews from kids, actually, in particular, because kids are brilliant. They're completely unfiltered, and so if they say they enjoy it, then that they really do, and that was an awesome feeling.
Yeah, it sounds like, and I guess as well, with it going out to kids, and like obviously the kids are the main target audience. Were you like you said, like Tom helped you to edit the book, so I can imagine like he helped maybe make it so that kids could understand any of like the more technical sci-fi elements of it. Like, were you ever worried about that? Like, I'm writing sci-fi for children, but like, will they kind of understand it? Like, was that ever a concern for you?
Not at all. Kids are really smart. I figured that if I could get adults to understand it, then kids would understand it. Because when you look around, there's actually, there's lots of technological and sci-fi concept. We're kind of used to the idea that kids know how to use their phones better than we do. They're technically smarter than us. They're sharper, they're quicker. We have experience on our side, but that's the only thing keeping us ahead. They're right there, and they know what they're doing. So I thought, if I can explain these things to a level that a passerby would say, yeah, okay, I understand that, then I figured that kids would understand it when they read it as well. And there were some bits where I was able to just say, you know what, this bit is very complicated, and I'm just going to say it's very complicated, and we'll move on. And so there's a couple of points in the book where I just go, it's very complicated, and that's fine. So they could just say, yes, that doesn't matter, but it's just the case. So I wasn't worried about that. The original version had more characters, and it was things like that I sort of had to simplify a bit so that you could actually focus, and so that each of the characters got a proper character journey, as they went through. So that was the important thing.
Yeah, more focus on our main characters. I like that. Yes, Barbara, we do need the longer version. Jade says special edition with deleted scenes and extra characters. Bring it on. I mean, I know I'm saying like, we can focus more on the main characters with in the final version, but just to say, 1000% would buy a special edition. Hopefully with sprayed edges. Who knows? Oh, can you imagine?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Sprayed edges, but with this design on.
That would be so cool.
Yeah, we're going to make it happen. We will make it happen. Don't worry. Okay, so we can. I'd love to talk about Adam-2. And of course, again, everyone, this will be spoiler free because it's not technically out yet. So we don't want to ruin it for everyone. But Alastair, if you want to let people know what Adam-2 is about, let's give people a little bit of a teaser of what they can expect from it.
Sure. So Adam-2 is, he's a robot, and he has been living in a basement for a very, very long time. There's a man who he knows his father, who sent him down into the basement to practice being a good boy. And Adam has been doing this for, it turns out, over 200 years. And he lives a very, very repetitive life. Every day is exactly like the same, until eventually he's discovered by two children, and they bring him back up to the surface, and he finds out that the world is completely changed. There has been a massive war between robots and humans. There's hardly anybody left, and the world is in ruins. And he also, without giving too much away, discovers that he potentially holds the key to ending the war, and he has to decide which side he's actually on. And he's also got to survive long enough to actually do something. So so that's the gist.
And honestly, it's such a cool concept. I would love to know like more about like what inspired you to write it. I did get a really great question as well. And because Adam 2 comes out on August 5th, has there been any talk about bringing your novels over to the US markets? Or like, do you know if maybe Adam 2 is going to come out in America or Orion Lost or anywhere else?
Not that I know of yet. My understanding is that at the moment, the US is still a little bit cautious about science fiction in children's novels. Obviously, it's something we're hoping will change. That would be great, but not so far, I'm afraid.
I mean, fingers crossed, because I would love an American version of both Orion Lost and Adam 2 in all of your future books. Like, that would be incredible. And they would probably be in hardback, which would also be incredible.
I hadn't thought about that. That would be awesome. Yeah.
So yeah, what inspired Adam 2? And did your initial idea for it ever change? Like, you know how you said with Orion Lost, you had the dream. Like, was that kind of like a similar kind of thing with this?
It was actually, and it quite often is the case that when I'm thinking about a story, it's one scene in particular that sticks in my head, and it's that Ooh. Even if the scene doesn't end up in the book, it's that kind of gives it the feel over the book. So in Adam 2, the scene was actually just Adam in the basement. So I was just suddenly had this idea about a boy who was in the basement and had just never left, and at the time he was just a human boy, but then I thought, well, how long's he been there, and how could he be there that long? And I thought, oh, okay, he's a robot. And then I thought, well, what would his life be like? And if he's a robot, he can be very repetitive, and he could be there for a really long time. And then gradually things came out from that again, and I realized he'd been there a long time. And I found that a really exciting idea, because as soon as I thought about it, I had a really clear idea in my head about what this little boy robot would be like. And I actually just sat down right there and wrote the first chapter without any idea what was going to be coming along, and found it, thought it was really exciting. And then everything then came out of that. I think once I started to think about the plot, I realized pretty clearly what I wanted it to be about, and I wanted it to be about empathy and about trying to see things from other people's point of view, and about the sort of separation of these two groups. So Adam was sort of perfect for that, because he's a robot, but he spent 200 years trying to think about what it would be like to be a human, and so he emerges into this world.
It is a really great concept. I honestly, I'm speechless. Claire's also like, it is a cool concept. And Orion Lost was a cool concept as well. Like, Alastair Chisholm doesn't know how to not have a cool concept. It's just,
I do.
Well, I mean, we would love to hear them. Jade has asked, have you ever read the Descender comics?
It's really interesting. I actually stumbled upon them about a month ago, and yes, that they feature a robot who has in fact been, I think, in a kind of sort of suspended animation for many years, and I started to read them, and I thought, oh my goodness. So I've read the first volume. It's Jeff Lemire, I think. And it's a series of graphic novels. His comics are always really good. So yeah, I do think they get on very well. I think they had a kind of similar idea.
I've never, well, I've heard of them, but I haven't read them myself. But I will. Copy of Adam 2 has been dispatched from Waterstones. Honestly, this is why people need to pre-order, because you could end up getting it early. Always pre-order. Yeah. Do you like to take inspiration from sci-fi movies and TV shows in your books?
Well, of course, yes. And when I was growing up, there was loads of science fiction series, and there still are, but I grew up on Doctor Who, Star Trek, Space 1999, and there were just loads of things. And the sci-fi that I loved were always the sci-fi series that actually were actually about humans, or about people and people's interactions. So you had, Doctor Who, for example, is you've got all the sort of really cool Doctor Who stuff. You've got the planets and the aliens and the goodies and the baddies, but it's all about the Doctor and his or her companions. It's all about their interactions, and it's the human stories. So I was definitely drawing on at least the themes of these things, and I wanted the feel of it. I wanted it to be science fiction, but not kind of bewilderingly complex. Just enough science fiction to allow me to kind of place these human stories. And with Orion Lost, obviously, I had a lot of fun because there's the ship's computer, and there's obviously a sort of link with 2001, the film with Hal, and can you trust it? Can you not? And so I wanted to have a bit of fun with that idea as well. So yeah, definitely pulling up on all these ideas.
Nice. I mean, you said before about how it was easier to write Adam-2 than Orion Lost because you'd already gotten the first book out in the world. It was something that probably like helped you to write and all of that. But like when you sat down to actually write Adam-2, was like any of the pressure like not putting you out? Like what was like, how was it much easier to write than Orion Lost just from that experience alone, or was it like maybe outside pressure or anything like that that made it harder to write, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it felt really good to write, because at the time that I was writing it, Orion Lost had only just come out, in fact. So there wasn't really any feeling of pressure from its reception or anything like that. I didn't really know what people were going to think. I knew somebody was going to publish it. So actually, Adam-2, I had an absolute blast writing it. And it's set in Edinburgh, which is my home city, and that was really fun as well, because it meant that when I was sort of deciding where they would be and all the places that they would go, I really knew where they were going. I knew which streets they were going down and what it would look like if you stood here and looked in this direction, and that was really fun as well. So no, it was tremendous fun to write. I really enjoyed it.
I can imagine. Just, I feel like when you read a story as well, and you can feel through the words that, oh, this author really enjoyed writing this book. Like you can just tell. Like it's such a fun. It's such. I mean, not just fun, but there's like so many moments in it that are just like I feel like so important as well, and I feel like a lot of people will take from too. So what were some of the challenges while you were writing Adam-2? And did you do like a lot of research for it? Like, was there anything else that you contributed to your writing experience that helped you?
Definitely. Well, actually, although being in Edinburgh was great, it did mean I had to make sure I was exact in the descriptions, because I thought I would never live it down if I actually got this wrong. And I was reading chapters to my writing group every week, who were all from Edinburgh. So if I made any mistakes, they'd be like, "Oh, no, you can't go down that road, because if you go down that road, you'll end up at this street and you wouldn't be able to see it." It's like, yeah, you're right. So I had to make sure I was sort of doing that properly and taking lots of aerial shots and things like that. The other aspect to it is that one of the characters, Lyndon, one of the main characters, is non-binary, and that I thought was very important that I properly research the use of pronouns, the sort of feelings, terminology, and things like that, because I thought it's obviously it's quite a sensitive area, so I wanted to make sure that I gave Lyndon sort of justice, and so that was very important that I do that right. And then there's general things, places where it's set. I learned sort of quite a bit about some of the history. The humans, for example, they're living in one of the castles, in Craigmillar Castle. So I was visiting Craigmillar Castle and looking around and sort of seeing where everyone would be, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that sounds it. Like that's probably like the best part of being a writer, is when you can kind of explore these places and be like, yeah, I'm doing this for research. Like, next you need to set one on a tropical island and then go to a tropical island for research,
Good plan.
Fantastic plan, if you ask me. I love the fact that you mentioned Lyndon being non-binary, because Jane did say a bit earlier. I was going to save this question for when we talk about characters, but yeah, I would love to hear how you decided to make a non-binary character in your book. Also, thanks for including that representation. Love to find middle grade for my kiddo so they can see themselves in a book. Like, I love that too. Like, any kind of representation for the kids who are growing up and they don't otherwise see themselves represented is always such a powerful thing, I think. So when I read it, and not just that, but like, obviously no spoilers in this video, but just like how explicit it is in the book, because I know sometimes it's easy to like skirt it. But yeah, like Adam asks about pronouns and yeah, all of those. So like, yeah, like, was it like a really conscious decision to make Linda non-binary?
It wasn't actually. It wasn't like I said, today I'm going to write a book about a non-binary character, or today I'm going to deliberately include a non-binary character. What happened was the three main characters are Adam, Runa, and Lyndon. And Adam and Runa, I had pretty clear right from the start, and then Runa needed a companion. And I thought, well, is it a boy? Is it a girl? I knew they were slightly older, and there's obviously, it's a slightly different energy in the storytelling depending on the gender. And I thought, well, is there any reason why I wouldn't have a non-binary character? And then and I thought, well, no. So I decided, okay, well, let's make them non-binary, and then that was Lyndon, and then I thought about pronoun use. Lyndon uses the Z and here pronouns, and just because that's how things sort of ended up, really. Because one of the things I found is, as soon as I started to think about Lyndon as a character, Z really sort of appeared in my head fully formed, and I thought, oh yes, that's what Z's like, and then off he goes. And so Lyndon ended up, I think possibly originally Runa was going to be more of the main character, but Lyndon actually ended up carrying the book. And when I started to think about the character journeys and the stories between them, I realized Lyndon was actually a perfect person to talk about empathy and to talk about seeing things from another person's point of view, and about sort of understanding other people. And so it all just went from there. So I think the really great thing for me was that Lyndon wasn't so much a conscious decision. Lyndon is just a person, and it's just that was the person who happened to be there, and that was the feeling that I wanted to get over, was that this was just a completely normal situation. It's just, in this case, it was Lyndon, and then off he went through the book.
Yeah, totally natural kind of evolution of the character as you were writing, as you were planning the story out. Like, I love hearing that. Like, seriously, it's like, oh, we just need, I would love more of it in middle grade, but baby steps, and it's becoming much more prevalent in middle grade too. So yeah, I'm so excited, because one of my favorite things about Adam-2 are the characters, and you see totally different sides of people, especially like Adam as a main character as well. So different, but also quite similar to Beth in Orion Lost. Was Adam one of your favorite characters to write? Like, you say that he had like a very repetitive kind of system going on. So that was really interesting to read. But also not just that, but the way his mind just expands as the world opens more up to him. He gets to meet more people and things like that. Like, was he like as much of an interesting main character to write as Beth?
Oh, absolutely. And for slightly different reasons, of course. Beth has a sort of thing about taking responsibility. That was sort of her story. And for Adam, it's just, he sees the world, and he's quite an optimistic character. I think that's his sort of base state. And I'm quite an optimistic character. So that was quite fun. I just had so much fun seeing how he would actually see reality in it, and he was he was great to write, because I could put him in these situations, and I knew exactly how he would respond to them and what he would think about things, and that worked really well. So he was definitely a favorite character. I think maybe my absolute favorite character is one who, he doesn't have a major role, or it doesn't have a major role, but it's a little robot called Fetch. And there's a scene where Lyndon and Adam are are in the robot camp, and somebody needs to bring them food. And I was writing it and I was thinking, oh, somebody needs to bring them food. So I came up with this little serving robot called Fetch, and Fetch then just took over the chapter, and Fetch gets all the great lines, and then Fetch is so good that I actually brought it back later on, and it ends up saying some of the most important things in the book. So Fetch is probably my favorite, just because it seemed like he just walked into the book when I wasn't expecting, and then just did the right stuff. So
a happy accident almost. And
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I love that. Just kind of it's like a scene stealer in a movie. Fetches,
Yeah.
just an absolute scene stealer.
Yeah.
I love that though. It's just, again, like such a natural progression of the story. Like a lot of it must have just wrote itself as you were writing. As much as you probably had a plan for it, I bet the story and the characters just spoke for themselves, and you were like, well, hang on, like I need to write this first. Like they were probably saying so much to you.
There's quite a lot of that. There's quite a lot of dialogue that they had, and obviously some that I had to remove in the end for space. But I could have kept them talking for much longer.
I can imagine. Like again, you could have made this book 85,000 words if you wanted to. And there actually one of the kind of more interesting themes of the book as well is the way that we kind of treat the environment. Like that was such a topical message to have in the book, and the way that our actions have like consequences on the environment, and like kind of two different species kind of coexisting and all of that. So like is like the sort of topic of maybe environmentalism or what we do to the planet, is that something that is important to you, and is that something that you kind of like to explore in your book?
Definitely. I mean, obviously we have to think about the way we're treating the planet. Otherwise, we'll be gone. So it's very serious. I think for me the main thing I was really trying to think about was how humans actually react to the world. So there's quite a lot of stuff about how artificial intelligence might be dangerous, and it might sort of take us over, and it'll be evil robots. And I thought, well, actually, the first sort of couple of generations, certainly, they'll be much more scared of us than we will of them. If you had a robot and it's capable of sentience, humans we're not really very good with that. When you look at colonization, slavery, and aggressive use of natural resources, we're not good at being restrained when we have an opportunity to exploit someone or something. So I wanted to kind of tap into that idea a bit, that we assume that we'd be the sort of victims and that the robots would be the villains, but I'm not sure that's actually the case. The positive thing is that although we make these mistakes, we usually then are able to pull back and say, wait a minute, we're doing wrong. Sometimes it has to be the next generation who looks at us and says, you were completely wrong on this. You have to change the way. And again, you're talking about middle grade. Middle grade is so full of really great stuff about this. This idea of reappraising the world and saying there's a new way of thinking about it. There's new representation. We can support more diversity. We can embrace social ideas. We can do all this stuff. The world does not have to be the way it currently is. So those are all the things that I was really trying to go for.
And very well as well, I might add. Nick, I loved the messages in your books. The ones in Orion Lost changed my life and helped me cope with my mental health better. Like that must be like some of the best feedback that you can get as a writer, right?
That's absolutely wonderful. Thank you very much, Nick. That's really great. It's good to hear.
And Emma loved Fetch. So why wouldn't you?
Fetch is awesome.
Yeah. I can't wait to see what Jade will think of Fetch when she reads it. Like it's going to be, that'll be an interesting discussion, me and Jade on Adam-2. You might not be able to answer this question as much, but like, was there anything that you didn't end up putting in Adam-2 that was on like the cutting room floor? Like any ideas that you had that you definitely won't use again in a future book, maybe that you can possibly share?
There actually, this time around, there wasn't very much. The story came together pretty much as I wanted it to. There were a couple of more descriptions of Edinburgh, because again, I mean, I did love setting it in my own city, and there were loads of places that I actually wanted to use and to show off, and there were various bits where they took sort of detours around other bits of the city that they really didn't need to. There's one lovely bit where there's a very long tunnel as you head towards Duddingston, which is kind of on the way to where the Human's Castle is, and it's called the Innocent Railway, and it's a very, very, very long tunnel which used to have a railway that had carts that were pulled by horses and pulled people back and forward. And I always loved the name, the Innocent Railway, and it's a really nice thing to walk through. And I was desperately trying to get the characters to walk through this tunnel. And about 3 times I had wrote a chapter where they sort of went through the tunnel, and there was no reason for them to go through the tunnel at all, except that I just wanted to say, look at this really cool tunnel. So in the end, I actually had to drop that. But it was things like that where I just wanted to show more of the world.
Right. Okay. So it's more like world expansion rather than like a plot line or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. Jade, Fetch sounds like I want to fall in love. That makes no sense as a sentence, but you know what I mean. We do know what you mean. We do.
I hope so.
One of the last questions of Adam-2 is, what is something that you hope readers will take from it?
I hope that what they'll take from it is an idea of empathy, the idea of seeing things from somebody else's point of view, and trying to just sort of live with differences. There's a bit very, very near the end when there's a line that says, we don't have to agree, we just have to talk. And I think we're in a very separated and entrenched world at the moment, with people on very, very different ideas and becoming sort of absolutely crystallized in the opinions that they hold. So to me, I really wanted to get over this idea that you could see the enemy, and then you could try and see the world from the point of view of the enemy, and what would it look like if you did that. So I'd hope that was a feeling that people came away with.
Yeah, I definitely felt more empathy by the end of it as well. I love how, like you mentioned before. I mean, no, I'm not going to say it because actually it could spoil something. No, I'll tell you after what I was going to say. But yeah, there's just so much packed into. Like, it doesn't look like the biggest book ever, when you look at it, but there's just so much packed into it that you just think, wow, like it could change the world. Like, that's like the messages, the importance of the characters and what they go through. Definitely something that I think is a huge theme that people will relate to and learn from. And it's one of my favorite reasons why I love this book. So would you ever, I mean, there was a question earlier as well from Tracy that's ties into this as well. Like, would you ever return to the world of Adam-2? Like, would you do it Adam-2 too? And would you also do an Orion Lost too? Like, what do you think is a plan for? Because you've created these worlds that I feel like there's just so much there. Like, they're just so imaginative. There's just so much that I feel like there's like loads more to learn. Like, would you return to both of those?
I'd absolutely love to. Orion Lost, I love Beth and her crew. I had such a great time with their characters, and I've got lots of questions that I sort of want to put on them. The aliens, for example, the Videshi. I have some really big questions about them, and I would love to explore that a bit in a second book. So I hope that one day I return there. And again with Adam-2, the world is. I think there's lots of interesting things there. I think I'd love to know what happens next. I'd love to know how some of the details about how they got there. Maybe a prequel or something like that. I think at the moment I have these ideas that I'm wanting to explore, and while I've got new worlds to create, I want to keep doing that. So someday I really hope to return to them though.
Oh, that would be awesome. And we could have like a Chisholm-verse where we have all of your stories existing in the same universe.
That's right. Yes.
Like that's something that could happen. Because as you said you have quite a lot of books on your brain, like a lot of books that you want to work on. Obviously, you can't say like anything at this point, I'm sure, but like, are you still wanting to continue writing books like the two that you've already done, middle grade, sci-fi? Like, are you definitely going to keep doing stuff like that?
Definitely. There's one in the works right now for 2022, and that's just a way of getting edited at the moment. There is also some other fun stuff that I'm getting to do. I've got 2 new picture books coming up, which is lovely to return to them, and I've got some new books for younger readers, a series about dragons, which is coming out next year. So that's something completely different, and the first of them comes out in January. So that's really exciting as well, getting to do that. So it's a completely different universe that they're in. But yes, I really love doing the science fiction middle grade, and I hope to keep doing that for as long as I possibly can.
Yeah, I mean, and then you said dragons, and I was like, "What? Woof. You're speaking my language." Yeah, Jade, I agree. Very exciting. 2022 pre-order, 100%, and everyone loves the idea of the dragons.
Excellent.
Emma asks, other than your own, which what book would you most recommend that a kid read?
Oh wow, that's a really great question. How on earth would you pin it down to just one? The book that I read when I was growing up, when I was about this age, that absolutely kind of blew me away was a book by Susan Cooper. It's called The Grey King. It's and I would say that's my favorite book, children's book that I've ever read. Here we go. Yeah, this is it here. And I don't know if you can see this, but this book has been read a lot. I literally read the cover off this book. Wow. I've dropped this book in the bath twice reading it. I've had to hair dry it back better.
So resilient.
And yeah, and the thing I loved about this book is it's a fantasy adventure, but the adults in this story have their own story that's going on in the background, and they have their own sort of history and relationships that are affecting the way that they behave in a way that's not really obvious always to the main kids in the story. But it's completely authentic and believable and understandable and quite sad in some ways. And when I was a kid and I was reading this, it absolutely blew me away that the adults had a proper role in the book, because quite often with kids' books, the adults are either completely gone, or they're only there in order to do something useful to move the plot along, and they do things which make no sense at all. And that always used to bug me as a kid. But these adults felt real, and that was the first time that I thought absolutely how much of a story is about the people in it. It's not just the actions or the mysteries or the adventures. It's about the people and what they think. So that I absolutely loved. So I would definitely recommend that book. It's the 4th in a series called The Dark is Rising.
I was going to say, I've definitely seen that book of Waterstones before. Dark is Rising.
Yeah, very, very, famous series and really good. I think there are lots and lots of books. A Kind of Spark by Elle McNichol is a book that I really thought was an important thing to be able to see things from a very different person's point of view, a neurodivergent point of view, and Elle, I think, has done a really great job at trying to encapsulate how that would feel. It's really good. I think the thing to do is keep reading anything that you enjoy. Read and read and read. Try and stretch yourself a little bit if you can, but don't worry if you want to go back and reread a book that you've read before. I would say if you want to read comics, I absolutely love comics, but there are comics with great stories, and there are comics which are a bit easy. So try and go for the great stories because they're worth the effort. But don't worry if you're not in the mood for it. I would say just read as much as you can.
Yeah, just do it.
Just do it. Yeah.
Just do it. I think you might need a new copy.
No, it's fine, really.
You don't need to read the covers. You can read the inside fine. The words aren't smudged, hopefully, from being dropped in the bath.
I've practically memorized it by now. Anyway, it's great.
You could write it from memory yourself.
Yeah.
Emma's read Oversea Under Stone from the same series.
That's right.
Nice and great reading advice. I agree. Definitely rereading things that you love. It gives you your passion back. I think if you start to feel yourself losing the passion for reading, reminding yourself why you love reading in the first place is usually one of the best things you can do.
Yeah, I think it can be a comfort as well. I think a book that you love, if things are getting stressful, it's wonderful to go back into a book where you enjoy it, and also quite often when you read it through once, you missed little details. So discovering new things that you hadn't come across before, I think is a brilliant feeling. So
yeah, that's what happened to me when I reread Orion Lost for Middle Grade Monthly. So it definitely works.
Yeah, there you go.
So yeah, that was the end of my questions. I do want to remind everyone that Adam-2 is officially out next week. But yeah, do you have you've got a final copy? Oh my gosh, I'm so jealous. That cover
It's so
is
nice.
gorgeous.
I know. It's Dan Mumford did the cover again. He did the cover for Orion Lost, and it is wonderful. And this is that's Edinburgh Castle. This is actually the Balmoral clock tower, which you might not know if you were outside of Edinburgh, but anybody in Edinburgh knows this is a very sort of famous tower in the middle of Edinburgh. So it was absolutely brilliant when I saw Dan's artwork for it. I was really chuffed.
That is beautiful. I didn't realize it was those things as well, but it makes sense. It makes sense, and it looks like very dystopian-esque and like futurized, and it just what a genius! What an absolute genius!
I love his stuff. It's so good.
You must have been so happy as well when you opened that email up with the covers for both of them and being like, "Whoa, those are fantastic."
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a great thing when you see the three characters at the Orion Lost, and then and I saw Adam just standing there. It's a brilliant feeling. I'm so lucky, really.
Yeah, don't normally enjoy sci-fi, but middle grade sci-fi I love. Yes. Okay, last question, and then I'll wrap up. Sorry. If you could design a tattoo for Orion Lost, what would it be? Ooh.
Wow. That is a question I have never heard before. Well, I think the line, of course, that for me that Orion Lost was all about is you are the master of your own ship. So if I was going to have a tattoo, I suppose it would probably be that line, because for me that was the whole thing that I was wanting to write about. It was a message I was trying to give to my own daughters. At that age, it was something that I thought was really important. So yeah, that would be it.
Oh, that's going to be my next tattoo. I've only got one, and it's like this little squiggle on my finger that nobody ever knows. People,
oh, cool.
I mean, people keep thinking it was just a pen smudge, but no, it's an actual tattoo. I'll get a proper one, I promise. So yeah, I mean, great, Claire. Please do pick up the books because they are fantastic. And again, I do have the links for Adam-2, including the signed edition, the normal edition, and from independent bookshops and Amazon. Down in the description, I've got Alastair's social media links, so do follow Alastair on all of those. And yeah, Alastair, is there anything you want to say to the people before we head off?
It's been absolutely wonderful getting to meet people, and I've had such lovely messages from folk coming in. I would say read more middle grade sci-fi, read more middle grade in general. It's all brilliant stuff. Thank you very much.
I love that. Yes, great message. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone. We'll see you later. Bye.